He's coming up all onto the sidewalk and all that, but by that time we had already made it inside the divot, or is what I thought. Until once we get inside the divot and the car passes, I turn around to like look who's all in here because it was supposed to be three of us. I turn around to look who's all in here, and I don't see my friend. And I just start screaming and yelling, and I'm like, nah, where are you? And I turn and I look in the street, and her right leg is flipped like horror movie style over her back, and it's just blood.
Wow. Good evening, folks. What a way to start the beginning of 2025. That there was a young man who, as you can see, got choked up as he tells a disturbing story about how he thought he and his friends had avoided the New Orleans terrorist attack until he realized his friend was not with him. It is January 1st, 2025, and this is Pop and Politics. I'm KJ. We are going to bring you all of the latest news surrounding this New Orleans terrorist attack. And now we have two. We know now there were two terrorist attacks, also this one in Las Vegas. And folks, as you know, we've been talking about this. This is not it. This is just the beginning. We're going to get into it and more next. I also want to introduce you to my co host tonight. All right. So joining me tonight is Phil Bell. He is right here on YouTube on the All American Talk Show. Thank you for joining me tonight, Phil.
No problem. Happy New Year, KJ. Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be with the Pop and Politics audience. And I certainly wish it was under better circumstances because it wasn't that long ago. We were all celebrating the new year. We were all excited for a lot of great things. And then I woke up and I saw mass casualty event in New Orleans. What's going on? And I truly believe that we are as under attack as we were on 9/11. So I am certainly happy that we have a chance to talk about this and to help our audience understand what's going on.
Absolutely, Phil. Absolutely. Before we get into it all, I know as I always say, folks, we want to make sure everyone sees this broadcast. Please hit the thumbs up as you watch. Hit the thumbs up. That does help to amplify our voice here on YouTube. As you know, we're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, and you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify under the name Pop and Politics. We love our chat. We shout out all of our super chats, so it's the best way to get your voice heard in the conversation and to show your love for conservative content. This is not just a podcast. This is a movement of God fearing, truth seeking, America loving people that value freedom. Stand with us. Subscribe so we can amplify this rallying call for freedom. Folks, we're going to need each other right now. We're going to have to hold on tightly to the community that we have built here because there's stuff coming, folks. There is a lot more coming. But we want to talk about what has occurred thus far. Breaking, before we get into what has already transpired, I want to, of course, bring you guys up to date on what is coming out recently. So I have a clip here of they found some other people that were involved in this coordinated attack. So if we share the screen here, all right. Let me see. Okay, yes. So this is breaking news. They've located some of the people that were involved with this attack. Take a look here. Can you hear it? Hmm. Okay, one second. All right, let me see here. Hmm. All right, let me try this again. 1 second. All right.
Well, this is live TV,
Right.
and I'll say, it's starting, like I said in the intro, we were talking about 9/11 briefly. It's starting to have some of the same vibes, and that is this persistent unknown of what's going on. Of course, now you've got people from potentially outside of the country. Who knows what this is? And now the speculation is going to run rampant. And what's going to worry me the most, not only after dealing with this issue, but then what is the overreaction from government going to be? And that's something that it might seem trite right now, but we've seen what happens, and we know that is not going to be a good thing.
Right. I'm not sure what's going on with the video, but I'll at least tell you guys. So apparently a man has been taken into custody in Houston, Texas, in connection with the terrorist attack in New Orleans. Local reports say a SWAT unit brought several people, including children, out of a home. The FBI believes that a 42-year-old Shamsud Din Jabbar did not act alone. We repeat, he did not act alone. Officials say Jabbar made a series of recordings before the attack, which are being reviewed by investigators. So that is what's out currently. Yeah, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. So I want to just back up a little bit and just go into what has occurred. So basically, law enforcement officials in Louisiana are hunting down what is likely an Islamic terror cell that was behind the terrorist attacks in New Orleans during the early morning hours today. The news comes after the FBI confirmed that in a statement that the suspect who allegedly murdered at least 10 people in a vehicle shooting attack was 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar. All right. Jabbar had an ISIS flag with him during the terrorist attack, the FBI said. This is according to CBS News. Federal agents were at the home of Jabbar's ex-wife this afternoon. Her new husband told the New York Times that Jabbar was in the process of converting to Islam and had started being all crazy. This is in quotes recently. The Associated Press reported that according to Louisiana State Police intelligence bulletin, the publication obtained surveillance footage captured 3 men and a woman placing one of multiple improvised explosive devices around the French Quarter. The report added that guns and bombs were found inside Jabbar's vehicle, which were concealed within coolers and were wired for remote detonation.
Hey, KJ, can I stop you for a second?
Yes, absolutely.
What's notable here, some of the info out there suggests that this vehicle, and one that I know you're going to talk about when you get to the Las Vegas terror attack, were both rented through Turo. And so Turo is a system where you can rent other people's vehicles, for those who aren't familiar with it, kind of like Airbnb or Airbnb for your car. So that's something that's noteworthy to add there, since you were talking about, what was found on the vehicle.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So as you mentioned, there's a connection. There seems to be a connection between this New Orleans terrorist attack and the one in Las Vegas. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So both vehicles were rented. So there's somebody else's vehicles. And so now you've got to think about, too, that does at least try to add some level of suspicion. Why are these people using the system? Why have they decided to rent vehicles? What are they doing? Why were these selected? It was my understanding one of them was a Cybertruck that was out in Las Vegas. The reports have indicated the one in New Orleans was an F-150 Lightning. So, why did they pick electric vehicles for that? What goes into that? And where did this terror cell come from? That's something that's very important for us to understand, because one of the reports I've seen is that at least one of the cars came over through Eagle Pass, Texas, over the border. Now, I cannot prove that, and I don't know if that could possibly have meant maybe the owner of one of these happened to drive into Mexico, because, of course, it's not illegal to do that, drive in there and come back. but that was another factor that's being added, and some of what has been floating around in relation to this.
Absolutely. Now let's take a look at this. We have video of when this event occurred. This is clip 3. Take a look. Wow. That's devastating. What's going on, Phil? I mean, first let's get into who this guy was, okay?
Right.
Because this is even more disturbing. So who was this guy? FBI identified, again, his name is Shamsa Din Jabbar as the suspect. Now deceased. He was a U.S. citizen and a
Right.
former military person. I mean, is this surprising to you?
No, it's not surprising, because I gotta be kind of careful here, because I don't want to go into what somebody might say is full conspiracy mode. At the same time, I really want the audience out here to think about this. Usually, whenever we talk about terror activities, we always use the word radicalized. Okay, well, here is a normal person. Now, he could be a normal American citizen, normal Jordanian citizen, normal Spanish citizen, you name it, but they somehow become radicalized, and there's never any explanation about what does radicalized actually mean. And how is it that we have millions and millions of people who can be devout, whether it is in their faith, their political ideas, or otherwise, and they never decide to do anything like drive a car through a crowd of people or crash a plane into a building? And yet, somehow, we have these incidents that take place, and the U.S. government, with all the surveillance that goes on, and notice, they're surveilling us right now, and they say, oh, well, it was a terror cell. What the heck have they been doing all this time? And with all of our money that they've been taking, this means lives, and there needs to be an explanation, not just about what happened, but about what the government is doing and isn't doing, and what they're willing to admit to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This guy, again, was he was ex-military. Let me see here. So, yeah, New Orleans. He was ex-military, 42-year-old U.S. citizen from Texas. And I have a clip here of him.
And let me break in there. So while Islam is being mentioned again, right, just like 9/11, and I'm Christian, I don't have any relationship to Islam, but it's always notable that seems to play a role in all terror attacks. This is not someone who grew up in a Muslim country, so that's important to remember.
Right. I mean, he grew up here.
Right.
So, I mean, when does this radicalization, if that's what you want to call it, occur?
Yeah, that's right. That's what you gotta answer the question here. And again, that's why I want to understand, to the extent that we're ever going to be able to find out from this government, what is really behind this. Mm-hmm. And look at it in a larger context. Look at the guy who tried to kill President Trump in Pennsylvania. Here's somebody who, you know what, at least grew up in a middle-class home, had some success in his life. Sure, he was treated as a loner, you name it. What possessed him and gave him the ability to go out there and do all of those things? You and I could not go and sit on top of a roof near even a concert without getting talked to, but yet this was somebody able to get near the President of the United States with a rifle and had left them there the night before. So I'm not willing to buy into the idea that this idiot, and that's what I'm going to call him. I won't call him a gentleman or an individual. I'll just call him an idiot, because what he did was evil. I will not buy into the idea that he was radicalized in the sense the media wants us to think that he was.
So you're saying you think he was some type of tool, some type of plant working for some type of shadow organization.
Absolutely. Look, I want to be clear. There is a level of randomness to life that we can never predict. There will be that person who is a quote unquote good person who suddenly breaks bad, as the phrase goes. there will be that random thing that happens that we can never prepare for. So we should never take that, out of our thinking. But everything that I've heard, everything that we've said, all you have to do is just change the names and you have the same playbook as 9/11. Now, you're telling me this happens year after year after year. You're telling me the federal government cannot be tracking and involved with and even listening in to what suspected terror cells are doing when they certainly can listen in to what it is that we're doing on the internet.
Right.
And for the billions of dollars that are put in, what's going on?
Absolutely. This is him on clip 2. Take a look here.
Texas, and now live in Houston. And I've been here all my life, with the exception of traveling for the military, where I spent 10 years as a human resources specialist and IT specialist, where I learned the meaning of great service and what it means to be responsive and take everything seriously, dotting I's and crossing T's to make sure that things go off without a hitch. So I've taken those skills and applied them to my career.
So this is the guy. This is
Right.
the guy. You would expect some Islamic, radical Islamic person, but he was a real estate agent for many years.
Right.
So something is going on, as you mentioned.
What do you think is going on? Because I'm curious. I don't want to be the only one, because I know anybody that watch this will say, well, Phil's spouting conspiracy theories. But what do you say? What do you think when you see this?
Well, I think that a couple of things. I'm also on the conspiracy end, but not where you're going. I think that this guy was some tool for some shadow organization or institution, deep state. And I don't think he was maybe someone that I don't think he knowingly is doing what he did.
Right.
I think that because I certainly believe in MK Ultra, and I believe in, there are people behind the scenes that are using and manipulating people to do their bidding.
Yeah.
So I think this is all part of some large master plan. And then, that's orchestrated not just with, individual cells that he may be part of. But look what we have going on here. For the last several years, the Biden administration has only deepened this crisis that we have in our country. They've weakened us at home. They've embarrassed us on the world stage. Many of the institutions have been infiltrated with anti-American sentiment. So we're creating an environment that not only radicalizes these people, but also that can kind of lay in wait, and these people can sprout up.
Yes.
What we just had, the guy who did the United Healthcare assassination, people are out here praising him. What kind of world do we live in that people praise these types of people that are right here in our country that hate America?
Yeah.
I think it was orchestrated in some type of way. I agree with you there. I just don't know how.
Well, I'll answer that, and I think you're onto something. I do not believe that the elites, the deep state, and so on, that they wake up every day and say, we have to control this institution, that institution, or otherwise. But I look at them as being the same way that somebody back in the, let's say, the 1600s, 1700s, if they wanted to influence the king, they would wonder, well, how do we influence the king? How do we get him to do what it is we want to do? We in the United States, we the citizens are the king. We are the sovereign. Therefore, the same people who would want to try to influence the king in a monarchy are going to want to influence us in a representative republic and get us to do what it is they want us to do. Kind of like Rasputin did back in Russia. So everything that they do is designed to get us to act a certain way. So they don't really care so much about the institutions. Oh, the DOJ here or the Department of Energy there. No, they want us, the citizens, to act, and they want us to act as irrationally as possible. So that way, the only thing that we could rely on, as broken as it is the government, the federal government in particular, itself. And that is the reason for everything that you see here. And look at it. 2 times in one day on one of the most joyous days of the year when you would have these random terror attacks. Well, what are you going to do? Well, let me give up more of my freedom, please. That's going to be the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the terror attacks, do you think that there's more coming? Do you believe that there's more coming out there that's coming quickly?
Absolutely. I think every part of the playbook, and that includes viruses. We hear a lot of discussion about bird flu. That's going to be something. We have a few people who've already been infected with it. I think you'll see more of these terror attacks, bioterror attacks. I think you will see more efforts to disrupt the financial markets and put that into a turmoil, because the one thing the election showed in 2024 and in the full year plus leading up to it is that more Americans are willing to be skeptical of their government and of the institutions that we look at, such as Hollywood. I don't mean government institutions, but Hollywood and so on. And so once we start to question that, that means their control actually starts to loosen and they have a problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. Now, when we talk about this coordinated attack, or let's say we go on what we're saying and there's something behind this, there may be some type of shadow organization that has coordinated this. So then what role does ISIS, does Al Qaeda play in it? Are they coordinating, do you believe, with these entities here in the United States?
You know, I'm not yet at the point where I'm willing to say yes.
Mhm.
In the spirit of question everything, I really want to understand what is behind the creation of these organizations in the first place. We in the West, we turn on the TV, we turn on the news, whether we were talking about and going way back into the 1980s, organizations like the Islamic Jihad, Hamas, of course, later on the Taliban, ISIS, and so on, everyone that gets created. How do they get created? What sustains them? How is it they're able, keep in mind, with very little in the way of money and resources, to acquire weaponry? How are they able to actually play on the world stage? Think about that. You and I are on a platform where you have several 100,000, close to 1 million followers, right? But you've got to think about, in an era without this level of connectivity, you had predecessors of these organizations able to impact world affairs with relatively little. So that's the first question I want to ask, long before wondering, well, are they behind it? Because are they behind it, or are they merely a beard for somebody else? And to be fair, I don't think there's just one group of somebodies that's in a oak paneled room where they're making all the decisions and saying, okay, let's do this, let's do that. But I do think there is a very, very strong continuity of ideas and a belief in control that has never, ever gone away. And it's strengthened itself throughout the 20th century and into now. And that is why we have what we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Developing right now, I'm getting unconfirmed reports. There's a hostage situation in Las Vegas right now. So we will continue to keep you guys abreast of that. But I'm showing here, there's footage coming out, unconfirmed reports of a hostage situation in Las Vegas. Let me give this to the producer. I am having system errors here, but he may be able to put this up.
By the way, shout out to your great team here at Metro Conservative Media. You guys do an amazing job of putting this show on and putting on the All-American Talk Show. So, just shout out, especially when we're doing things live, right? And everything's
right, exactly, Phil. We do have a super chatter here as well. Mountain Goddess. Thank you so much, Mountain Goddess. Let's put her up here. She says, we all need to be vigilant and strong. Don't worry about others calling us xenophobic, racist, or any of the names they come up with. They want us to be relying on government, and we must not accept that. This is why our 2A rights are so important. $50 super chat. Thank you so much, Mountain Goddess. We certainly appreciate you. And you are saying exactly what Phil was saying here. Can you want to respond to that, Phil? What Mountain God has said about the 2A rights? Do you think this is something they're going to try to get our 2A rights off from?
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Mountain Goddess. I really appreciate it. Yeah, 2A rights are critically important, and I want to go a step further. So take that and add to it. How can we be independent of government, right? What are we doing to make sure that we can survive with our family members, with our friends, with our neighbors? What are we doing to help each other? I'm bad at this. I admit it. But the more and more that we do that, we rely on our 2A rights, we rely on our independence, the less we need the government and the less impact they have.
Yeah. All right. I want to bring you guys this video, breaking news out right now. So apparently there's some hostage situation in Las Vegas. We don't know if this is connected to the terrorist attacks we've seen earlier today, but something else is going on in Las Vegas. So we will continue to follow this. We're also seeing breaking out in New York and in Toronto. Reporters have now taken to the street calling for a global intifada. So we're seeing this. This is insane.
A global intifada.
Yeah.
Okay. See, that's again, how many times have we been hearing about there needs to be an intifada? Oh, we hate death to America, blah, blah, blah. And what happens? The next step is going to be the government will want us to surrender some kind of rights. Now, when we did this the last time in 9/11, we got the TSA, which I affectionately call time for sexual assault, because of the way that they go about their business. And by the way, just as an aside, since I mentioned them, one thing to watch out for, the current head of the TSA, he wants to remain in his job in the Trump administration. He is the one that created the invasive pat down procedure that you have to go through if the machines they have that don't work say that you have something on your person which doesn't exist. Now, I mention that because let's ask ourselves, what are the next things that they can try to do? Well, our public transit could be at risk. Let's find some way to screen people there. Well, our buildings can be at risk. Let's find some way to do this, do that, or the other. All it's going to lead to are restrictions on the freedom of movement. I believe that's going to be the next frontier for them, especially with all the setbacks they've had.
Yeah. But Phil, how do we weigh that with protecting our country? So we know right now this previous administration or current administration has created an environment within our country where our borders were wide open. Yep. We've had people coming into our country, unvetted criminals, evil people who want to do America harm for the last several years. They're just waiting to do another attack. So how do we protect ourselves and then still keep our rights?
Well, the first thing is, rights are never negotiable. You know what I mean? Never negotiable. And I'll say it right here. I would rather be dead with my rights than alive without them. And that's a big statement, and it's true. But the way that we stay safe is, first of all, we the people have to be vigilant at all times. You know, the one thing government says that I agree with, one of the few things, if you see something, say something. When you get on public transit, always be looking around, keep your surroundings in sight at all times, because you can be the person that ultimately stops this or warns others about what's going on. So that's step one. Step two, we have to be vigilant with the politicians. So whenever we have an opportunity to go, whether it's to talk to a member of Congress or our local sheriff or otherwise, or there's a city council meeting or whatever it is, you don't have to go to everyone, but you do have to attend once in a while and see what they've been up to and let them know you're going to hold them accountable. And that the only thing you really expect for them to do is to keep you safe within the bounds of the expansive rights, and the rights are so expansive they're unlimited, that we have been granted by God. And if they want to infringe on that you will respond by voting against them, and that's the ballgame. So if we do those two things, we protect ourselves personally and we watch out for what the politicians are doing, we will be safe. Because if you look around the rest of the world, this does not happen any other place except where the government gets involved and tries to pit people against each other.
Well, speaking of protecting ourselves, we know within the last several years, the left has been trying to limit our 2A rights.
Yep.
Just here in Maryland, in Baltimore City, they're trying to take away concealed carries. And again, this is going on all across the country. So, what do we do about that? I mean, while we have crime up, while we have illegals coming into our country doing God knows what, terrorist attacks and things like that, they're also trying to take away our gun rights.
Well, let's be clear. They're trying to take away gun rights from law-abiding citizens.
Right.
Because criminals have concealed carry.
Mhm.
Criminals can carry whatever guns they want, and they have no problem doing so, and no one stops them. But us, we're the ones that get harassed. So it's important to continue to pound that, and exactly what you said, we've got to be willing to spread that message to others. And the people who are the most important to take it to are those suburban moms who are always scared that, oh my gosh, somebody's going to do something terrible with a gun. No, the people doing something terrible with a gun are the folks we're trying to stop by having our own protection.
Absolutely. I do want to acknowledge our super chatter here. So we do have another super chat here. Let's see. All right. Kung Fu CJ says, I am here popping politics. Thank you so much, Kung Fu CJ. And for you all who are just joining, this is Phil Bell. He is also on the Metro Conservative Media Network. He has a channel here on YouTube called the All American Talk Show. You guys got to go on and subscribe. It's a phenomenal show. They've just started, he and Nicolese Ambrose. So definitely go on and subscribe, and you can get more of his commentary along with that.
And by the way, I did not pay KJ to say that. So KJ, thank you for saying nice things about us.
Absolutely. No, you wouldn't have to pay me. I say it from the heart. So yes. All right. All right. So I want to talk about this coordinated attack. So initially, the FBI came out and even said that it wasn't a terrorist attack. And if you can believe that.
Of course. Right.
And I don't understand why she did that. I have that video here. Let me see here. Do we have that, producer? The video of the FBI agent saying that this was not a coordinated attack. Let me see. Clip 11.
Kirkpatrick said, we'll be taking over the investigative lead for this event. This is not a terrorist event. What it is right now is their improvised explosive devices that was found, and we are working on confirming if this is a viable device or not. As Chief Kirkpatrick said, we're asking everyone to stay away from Bourbon Street, specifically from Canal Street to St. Anne. That is my ask. Once again, stay away from Bourbon Street, Canal Street, all the way to St. Anne until we can figure out what is going on. Our goal is to provide you additional information at the 11 a.m. press conference.
So why would she come out with such authority and say it wasn't a terrorist attack immediately when they really didn't know?
Right. Well, not only that, but she's using language like improvised explosive devices, IED, which is a military thing if you think about it. No, it's not a terrorist attack. But by the way, don't forget back when COVID-19, aka the Kung Flu, and that's for you, Kung Fu, you made me think of that. When that came out, they said, no, it's not a problem. It's not from China. Go out, go party, go do whatever you want to do, right? Right before they decided, actually, no, let's go the opposite direction. So we've got a very long epidemic of incompetent leadership in government. And let's also remember the leadership in the elected ranks is bad, but the bureaucracy, people like her, are the absolute worst because they're completely unaccountable and there is no real standard for the hiring and the skill set that they need to do their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to acknowledge another super chatter here. Shantia Frazier with the $5 super chat says Sheba dog in a combat position. Yeah, I'm not sure. What does she mean by that?
I think like the Shiba Inu dog or yeah.
Okay.
You know how it kind of looks? Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the way this crew that is investigating in New Orleans looks. So, and I don't have the photo or video here, but they did a press conference. The chief of police, FBI, they had the whole squad or whole crew of people out there, and it was predominantly women. Women were investigating this, and it was just a hodgepodge of people, and they honestly, people were commenting about it because they don't sound like they know what they're doing.
Right.
Did you get any of that, or you see any of that, Phil?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's pretty much what I see, or what I've seen for the entire last 4 years of the Biden regime, is a lot of government people coming out, going to the microphone and talking like they don't know what they're doing. And that's because in general, they don't. They are not, we've got to go back and really think of it this way. There has always been, as I said, a concerted effort to control the way we think and what we do. But if you go back to the 1980s, you go back to the 1990s, the Clinton era, so forth, even the Obama era, you had a lot of people who were within those bureaucracies that were trained in what they were in their jobs. They were capable, even if we didn't necessarily like what they did. Now we have a lot of people who are incapable. They're being put there for DEI reasons. They're being put there just to show a certain image. And by the way, I'm not saying this because I'm trying to demean the spokeswoman's her sex or her race or anything like that. But it is clear the more and more that you see certain people, it's being put there just for show as opposed to capability. So what I want to see, again, and this is something I'm very excited that President Trump will be doing, is getting rid of DEI and bringing back qualifications, capability, skills, all of that. It's something that we cannot live without.
Absolutely. And a lot of us who have been criticizing this stuff, we've been called xenophobic, we've been called bigots, we've been called all kinds of names when we point out these things. But the fact of the matter is, Biden himself came out and said that they were picking people due to their race or due to their gender. It's
Right.
just as clear. So it's not us who are pointing these things out. They said it themselves.
Right. Look at Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Right.
He selected Ketanji Brown Jackson after saying, I want to pick a black woman, not I want to pick the most qualified jurist. And right off the bat, you now look over and say, well, is she the most qualified jurist at the time to serve on that court? And to me, that is probably one of the most demeaning things, because he put her in that position. And now we're asking the same thing about everybody throughout, because we see plenty of people that clearly aren't good at what they're doing. And we see them saying, we only want people who fit a certain look, which, by the way, has a term called racism and also sexism. So that's absolutely wrong. And I'm glad you pointed that out, KJ.
Yeah, absolutely. We have Kung Fu CJ with the $5 super chat. Says ISIS flags truck exploded in Vegas at Trump Hotel. Legal immigrants. They don't want to tell us the truth.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about these coordinated attacks because, like you, Phil, I don't believe that this is the end. This is just the beginning of these attacks coming. Now, folks, we talked about this on the show just a couple of months ago. We had on a clip from Sean, I believe his last name is Ryan. He is a former military guy. He had on at the time on his show Sarah Adams. She is a former national security. She is a national security expert, and she talked about this very thing. She was getting intel, talking about how they saw a lot of coordination within ISIS, within radical Islam, that were going to be coordinating, and that we may get an October 7th style attack here right in the United States. This is 5. Take a look.
What kind of places do you think they're going to target?
So
This is what's complicated. So Al-Qaeda's preference, as you can imagine, is symbols of the U.S. or anything that causes economic damage, right? So Capitol is a great symbol. Capitol was actually I think the Capitol is, a lot of people are targeting it, but the Capitol was in their propaganda just as 9/11 when they were memorializing 9/11, right? So the Capitol matters. I feel like bridges or any kind of public transportation always matters because it puts costs against us and it causes fear. But here's where it gets complicated. So remember, the terrorists might have their goal is they're going to attack the metro in DC, right? But remember, some of these terrorists are going to be ISIS. And remember, they can change location. So the ISIS guy might go down the metro and say, there's not many people down here. I'll kill 20, but there's a event going on. I'm going to go up there, right? And because ISIS is a little different. ISIS just wants mass casualty.
Wow. So she was talking about how we need to be prepared domestically for something like this to occur. So this isn't the end.
Well,
I want to, Phil, what did you think about that exchange?
Well, I mean, it was very interesting what she said, but again, going back to our earlier conversation, look at the specificity with which she can speak about the attributes of ISIS and Al-Qaeda and so on. How is it we can't do anything about that? How is it that they're so good, so capable, so wonderful in terms of their skills that we, the United States, can't figure out how to stop them? Are they infiltrating that the way they were the crowds on January 6th? And if they are they doing it with the best people or are they DEI hires? This really bugs me because, again, we are now going to have a period, even before the government tries to encroach on our freedoms, that we're going to have people who are afraid. You're going to say, you know what? I don't think I want to go to that concert. I already hear people saying they don't want to go to the inauguration, who are Trump supporters, by the way, because they're afraid something's going to happen there. And what happened today is only going to magnify that. We're going to start by living in fear. We're going to follow up with evisceration of our constitutional rights, just like happened under COVID. And we're going to have a lot more to dig out from. And the people who we are paying money to, paying massive amounts of money to, not voluntarily, but it's theft. It's called taxation, but it's theft. And they aren't able to do anything other than say, yeah, you know what? Well, they could go from the metro or go up to the event upstairs and maybe cause some trouble there. How about, no, you know what? They're not going to do that because we've infiltrated their cells and we're going to put a stop to them before they get anywhere near a vulnerable American.
Well, I hear you saying that, Phil. I mean, and we have a super chat here. Laura with the $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Laura. Good to see you on 2025, right? She says, do you all think something is going to happen on Inauguration Day? And I mean, it is a legitimate, fear. It is a legitimate risk there, isn't it, Phil?
Absolutely, it is. And I do think something's going to happen. Now, I don't know if it's going to be big enough that you end up having things completely disrupted, but I do think you'll end up having something happen on Inauguration Day that is noteworthy. And I certainly pray that no lives are lost. I am planning to go there. I will be down there because I want to see President Trump get inaugurated again, and I want to be there and be a part of it, just like I was in 2016. I'm not going to let anybody, whether it's the deep state or ISIS, keep me away from that. But Laura, you're right. I think something absolutely will happen, but I don't think it's going to be the kind of catastrophic thing that, somebody might write about in a movie.
Yeah. Well, here they are talking about it again on this clip on the Sean Ryan show. This is clip 7.
No, that's for the wave. So remember, there's a wave of embassy attacks, but then there's this multi-coordinated attack. It's a completely separate wave of attacks. So they're going to get the same October 7th attack in Europe as we're getting in the U.S., as planned right now anyway. And they also, 1,000 terrorists were supposedly trained for the U.S. and deployed, and 1,000 were supposedly trained for the Europe attack and deployed. The embassy plots are completely different with completely different trained terrorists.
Man, why haven't they hit yet?
Because the training takes the time. So for
they're
Israel,
here. They're
Yeah.
here, though.
Supposedly. Yeah.
Okay,
When they got here.
Let me ask, how long have they been here?
I'm not sure, but if we just do math quick, okay? Israel, they trained 500 terrorists, right? They got a longer timeline, but they were planning to train 500 in 3 months, right?
So again, they're talking about intelligence who have this intelligence that this is all a coordinated attack. I have here another super chat here. Let's see here. From Victor, says the same thing happened in Germany weeks ago. And he's right. Thank you so much, Victor Plays, with a $2 super chat.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. Now, what happened in Germany? I apologize. I'm a little ignorant of that.
Oh,
Do
yes.
you remember?
Yeah, on Christmas Day. So let me see here. I have it here. So on Christmas, I believe it was Christmas market attack. So authorities.
Oh, yes, that's right. Okay, I
Germany.
do remember now. Right.
Yeah, well, there was a terrorist attack at a Christmas market in Magdeburg. According to the Ministry of Justice, the northeastern state of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, the suspect, identified as Talib A, implied that he would commit acts of violence on 2 occasions prior to the attack on December 20th. It killed 5 people and injured around 230. So again, this stuff is right. A lot of things are happening within this time period.
Yeah, and how is it that later on he implied he would commit acts of violence? I mean, was he, I don't know, drinking a couple beers with some friends and said, I might commit some acts of violence, and they just chalked it up to the alcohol? Or is this something that was actionable that, whether we're talking about a police agency or otherwise, had and wasn't acted on? And if so, why?
Yeah, I'm not sure. He drove into a crowd of people at the Christmas market on December 20th. Let me see. Authorities in Germany, I'm looking here on the news reports. He asked the employee whether she had seen the pictures from Boston. Something like that would happen here too, the ministry said. Yeah, they don't have much here going on. He wrote a letter to a public prosecutor back in August of 2015, stating, from a purely postmodern philosophical point of view, you are dirty bacteria that should soon be destroyed to protect the German people from the danger you are. So I don't know. 50-year-old suspect.
Okay, yeah. You know what? Try writing a letter like that to who is it that used to be the prosecutor in Baltimore before?
Marilyn Mosby.
Yeah. Try writing a letter like that to Marilyn Mosby when she was in there. See what happens. It probably wouldn't be, you know what? This looks like a crank. Let's go ahead and ignore that. No, that would be a perfectly good reason, by the way, to try to check up and see what you're doing, even if they're not making contact with you. And I'm not trying to be flip here. This is serious. And the reason why I keep on this point is just listening to those clips from the Sean Ryan show. And I don't want to impugn the woman who was on there. She seems like she's very intelligent and so on. But how is it that so much is known and yet so little is done? That's got to be the question we ask, because I'm not just trying to make a political point here. I'm talking about our lives.
Right. Yeah. We have another super chat here. Kung Fu CJ with the $5 super chat says Germany was planned just like here. The suspect used a car. Here they use trucks.
Yep. Yeah. You're right. You're right, Kung Fu CJ.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know what's going on here. I know we have President Trump did speak out on this on Truth Social. He made a comment about this earlier today about the New Orleans terrorist attack. He says, when I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in our country, that statement was constantly refuted by Democrats and the fake news media, but it turned out to be true. The crime rate in our country is at a level that nobody has ever seen before. Our hearts are with all of the innocent victims and their loved ones, including the brave officers of the New Orleans Police Department. So we have not seen the end of this. I will tell you that. I know for sure. We have not seen the end of this. And as you mentioned, Phil, if this is something that's coordinated by the deep state, or if it is something coming out of radical Islam, if people are being radicalized, it's coming. It's
Right.
coming.
It absolutely is.
And so at this point, folks, we just have to prepare. We have to be prepared. We have to stay vigilant. We have to stay aware of what's going on, as you mentioned, Phil, of our surroundings. Now, you are still going to the inauguration, but is
And
this, you think Patriots should still continue to go?
look, if we remember, the first step toward giving away our rights and our freedoms is when we step back, right? That's what we saw in COVID-19. People started to put on masks on their own. And what was the next thing that followed? The government followed that lead and said, oh, you want to give away your freedom for your face to be seen? Don't worry, we'll help you out. Now, like I said, it might sound flippant there, but here's the reality. If we are willing to do something, and think about all the people who campaigned for President Trump, who volunteered, who went out on social media knowing they were going to lose friends and contact with family and so forth, simply for taking a normal political stance of supporting one guy over the other candidate. And then we're going to say, well, you know what? I think I'm not going to go to the inauguration. That is going to be that first step back into the abyss. And that's why I absolutely want to be there. And I encourage all of us to be there. And here's one other thing to think about. If we start living as independent, as free Americans once again, as opposed to people who depend on the government to do everything for us, then it gets to be much, much harder for them to actually execute these things, because somebody will see something and they will say something. Somebody will have the ability, where it is legal. Don't say I'm encouraging you to bring firearms into Washington, D.C. or places you're not supposed to, but it will be legal in more places as time goes on. And we will have that ability to prevent these things from happening. There is a reason why they didn't happen for almost a century, but then the more and more we became dependent on government and started to live life in fear, that the more and more these problems happen.
Yeah, you're right. And as you said, I mean, if you see something going on, say something. It looks like here there are reports coming out that people are reported twice to this New Orleans terrorist army, COC, for Islamic extremist views. He had for his Islamic extremist views. They reported him, but they were too scared of causing a racial or religious issue to address. So here we are again, back at this whole type of area, the woke people, afraid to talk to people, afraid to say something because they will be deemed racist, or this is what we are. This is what we're living in right now. Kung Fu CJ with the $2 super chat says, Phil, you are correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Kung Fu CJ. Tell me, KJ, come on. Who could sit there and say, all right, this guy might end up being a danger to me? Because think about it. Even if you're not saying that he might go out and commit a terrorist attack and cause mass casualties, maybe he might just be a danger to me. Mm-hmm. So rather than do anything about it, I'll just say, well, I don't want to be called racist. Really? That's absurd.
This is what people think, though. I've seen people do it.
You're right. No, you're right. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense to me what they are saying.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And even with the assimilation piece. So we do have a serious problem in this country where a lot of anti-American thoughts and behaviors are pushed out in this country. And, with that, when people come here, either legally or illegally, but I'm actually referring to legal immigrants, now they are not encouraged to assimilate and love our country. And so that can cause a huge problem within America. They don't want to assimilate. So speaking of that, we have this issue here where a mother was arrested trying to flee to Canada after she and her husband allegedly tried performing an honor killing on their daughter for refusing to be shipped to Iraq for an arranged marriage. This is just exactly what I'm talking about. This was a viral news story within the last couple of weeks. So the mother was arrested at the border while fleeing to Canada after she allegedly tried to strangle her daughter in an honor killing.
Wow.
Zafara Subhai Moshin Ali, 40, was charged with attempted murder, kidnapping, and assault after the attack on October 18th, alongside her husband. But why is this going on here? This isn't like American. This isn't something American values and things like this. But again, there's no assimilation. So these types of things are left to fester and take hold.
Well, you make a great point. The problem, one of the underlying problems, we have a lot of problems. I shouldn't say the problem, there's a lot of them. But one of them is we no longer are willing to recognize right versus wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is no circumstance at all under which somebody should say, well, I don't like the fact my daughter doesn't want to be in the arranged marriage, so I'll kill her. No. And if we're not willing to embrace right versus wrong, and if we're not willing to stand up for right versus wrong, then you'll have a whole host of craziness going on. That's the reason why we have the OnlyFans culture. That's the reason why we have men in women's restrooms. That's the reason why we have honor killings going on, because no one is willing to say, or I should say very few Americans are willing to say, yeah, you know what? That's inappropriate. And it's like you said, because, and I've heard this from people, oh, well, I don't want to be racist. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be perceived as judging. No, you can. You absolutely can, and you should.
Absolutely. And how is someone like this culture, how is this culture able to survive in America? This is the issue that I have with it. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't agree with this, but if this is what they're doing in Iran or Pakistan or wherever, do it. That's your culture over there. You do it. But here, that's not something that we allow happening here. That's not something that goes on and shouldn't go on. We're a free country. You're free to marry whomever you choose. But the fact that this is something that's going on here is a big issue. That's a big issue because it lends to a larger issue as to these people are coming here and they're not assimilating to our culture, to the American way of life. So, yeah. But thankfully she was caught and the daughter was saved. But yeah, you kill her.
Yeah, well, you're right, and that also you got to think about just in general. If we had that strong culture, which includes right versus wrong, how much of this do you think would actually happen? Or how many people do you think would say, well, you know what? Either I'm not going to move there or I'm going to move somewhere else if it's so much in part of my life that I need to be able to kill my daughter under certain circumstances. In fact, what you'd probably have are more people saying, wait a second, you know what? That doesn't make any sense. I'm ashamed of even thinking that in the first place before they even get to the idea of, well, let me go somewhere else and do it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Again, reporting here from Las Vegas. So again, new reports. Las Vegas has a heavy police presence due to a hostage situation following a Tesla truck explosion near the Trump International Hotel. The blast killed 1 and injured 7, with various explosives involved. It's unclear if the two events are linked. Authorities are investigating, and this is a developing story. Updates will follow. So this is out of the Associated Press. Something else is going on with some type of explosion. Again, we don't know if this is a terrorist attack here or what, or if this is related to what occurred earlier. But something's going on.
Yep.
DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas announced the New Orleans attack is being investigated as a terrorist attack by the FBI. Okay, we knew that.
Did he announce it from the what is it? One of his really high-end clothing stores in Georgetown? I'm just I got to take that shot at him because he has been one of the absolute worst parts of the Biden regime, and so much of this falls at his feet.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I totally agree. I have been saying for, the past 2 years or so that what the Biden administration has done on the border, to me, I believe was unconstitutional, and he should have been impeached just for that. He failed to secure our country. They failed to execute the laws that were on the books, and he should have been impeached just for what they did on the border. So,
Agreed.
yeah, yeah. But again, we have here in New York City, thousands of pro-Palestine supporters are marched throughout New York, waving Palestinian flags hours after 15 Americans were killed in a terror attack. Again, and I know everyone should have their own rights, but we're going to become like London. We're going to become like the UK, where they're being taken over by a culture that's not of their own.
Well, also, remember what used to happen in every foreign country where there was a large Muslim population. If some terror attack somewhere was successful, you suddenly had a flash mob of people going out, death to America, death to Israel, death to this, death to that. Well, now you see the same thing happening here. So that goes back to our discussion on the deep state. Who is behind it? Where do these flash mobs come from? Are there people sitting out there saying, I'm enjoying my New Year's, and then they get a text message alert, hey, we got to go out here and wave our flags? How does that work?
That's true. That's true. Well, we will continue to keep you all updated on what is going on with this as things unfold. Reports are out that this Cybertruck was awesome. I mean, if this explosion happened in any other type of vehicle, it would have been much worse. But apparently the Cybertruck took most of the glass. So not even the glass doors of the lobby at Trump Towers were broken.
That's amazing. Yeah, Elon had mentioned that the Cybertruck was very good because of its construction on holding a lot of that impact in the body. So that is terrific.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Final words, Phil. Please share with the audience where they can find you. I see in the chat tons of people are asking again where they can find you all, your YouTube channel.
Well, go over to, it's at All American Talk. We are the All American Talk Show. I'm on with my wonderful co-host, Nicolai Ambrose, who's been a good friend of mine for decades. And it's just great to be on with her and part of Metro Conservative Media Network. And you can also find me on X at Phil Bell 4022. You'll see a lot of conservative content there. You'll see a lot of train content there because I love trains too, and I love the Trump train. So there's a lot of that. And but please feel free, send me some messages. I want to hear from you, and anything that we want to talk about. We love to get some ideas for the All American Talk Show as well. So thank you so much for having me on, KJ.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. It's always good to have you on. I can't even believe this is your first time on Poppin' Politics. You need to come back. Definitely. We got to have you back.
You tell me when, and I will be there. And I've got a collection of over 20 Trump hats, so I can do this multiple times and not repeat them.
All right. I want to acknowledge some of our additional super chatters here. All right, we have Mark Slater. I love that hat, bro. Happy New Year.
All right. Happy New Year to you too.
Yes, and Kung Fu CJ with the $5 super chat says this is leading up to martial law, which will suspend the Constitution. Thoughts on that, Phil?
Oh, that's what they're going to try to do. But remember, because they being the elites, the deep state, you name it, have learned that most frontal assaults rarely work, it will be incremental. So you'll start to see things like, oh, we need a lockdown. Oh, we need some way to deal with this, that, or the other. You look at some of the laws that allowed for not quite martial law, but a lot more presence of government that we saw during COVID. Look for some of those to be resurrected. And here's the part that a lot of people aren't going to want to hear. A lot of it is going to end up coming from Republicans who don't do their job and allow themselves to get slaved into this by the elites. So those are the people that we've got to work the hardest to make sure they stay in the right place. And I'm a proud Republican, lifelong, but I know it is usually our party that screws it up like they did after 9/11.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have another super chat with Ren Button. Says American parents used to raise better children. More important for them to be good people rather than rich or famous. We were group headed for bad, grateful, but area and whooped for lies or disrespect. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I certainly agree with you, Ren. Thank you so much for that $20 super chat. Very good, good comment there. That's the correct. We've fallen by the wayside a lot in parenting in general. We are not parenting kids the way we used to. Now these children are actually being raised by social media, by culture, and not by faith and family.
Not social media, socialist media, because that is so much of what gets propagated there. I will tell you, I couldn't believe it one day. I got on and some group, it was this weird group where they were talking about how landlords were evil and that landlords were reducing the amount of housing or making it more difficult for people to get a place to live simply because they had the temerity to own a piece of property. Give me a break. That's the kind of thing that you're seeing out there. And what you're not seeing is enough good stuff like we have here. So I hope the audience will take this, share it all over social media. Let's make it less socialist. Let's drive a lot of that craziness off there and get the values back that the super chatter was talking about. And thank you for that.
Absolutely, you're 100% correct. Another super chat from Ren Button with the $5 super chat says, we were grounded for bad grades, but straight whooped for lies or disrespect. Yep, absolutely. Kung Fu CJ with the $2 super chat says, you are right, KJ. Thank you so much, folks. Thank you. Mark Slater with the $10 super chat says, love the term socialist media, using that one. Thank you. Yep, that's Phil for you. He's got so many great terms. Thank you, Mark Slater. Thank you so much. Yeah, you've opened my eyes up a little bit, Phil, because I want to be honest. I was a little worried. I'm worried. Just about these attacks. I want to go to the inauguration. I'm planning to go to the inauguration. But you've brought in a different perspective on the idea of the fear. They're trying to use this fear to push us to give up our rights and to stay indoors and things like that. And we can't let them win. We just can't let them win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for stressing that. I hope everybody who's within earshot of us understands that, because that was the thing that really had a big impact on me during the whole COVID fiasco. It wasn't that government was willing to overreach. It was that we took that first step. And I couldn't believe how many people, even people who agreed with me on freedom and liberty and everything else. Oh, no, Phil, look, it's just going to be temporary. As if nobody had ever read a history book to know that anytime you give up a right, you give up your freedom. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about the freedom to select McDonald's or Burger King, or the freedom to the right. I'm going to make sure I say it correctly. The right to bear arms, the right to travel where you want, and so on, that it is virtually impossible to get it back. So we got to thank God that we were able to get so much of it back after COVID, but beware of what is going to happen next, and let us not be the first ones to initiate that.
Absolutely. And as I always say here, folks, you guys who watch regularly, I say that God is not a God of fear, and fear is of the enemy. And so we know we just must, us people of faith, we have to know that we must continue to pray, but we cannot make decisions and move with fear as our navigator. We cannot do that. We have to push back against it. This is what the enemy wants. This is what the terrorists want. They want us to be fearful so they can really overtake our nation. That's what they want to do. They want to overtake our nation, whether it be them, whether it be government. They want to overtake our nation, and we have to stand up against it. And like you mentioned, I saw a comment here. Fight, fight, fight is what President Trump said, and it rings true already in 2025. We must continue to fight.
And I'll give you one last quick point, KJ. I was reading Exodus, and what always happens in Exodus, the Israelites would get in trouble, and it always started with what? Fear, right?
Mhm.
Almost every time it started with fear. So we've got a template that goes back centuries on what not to do. So we should use it.
Absolutely. All right. On that note, we will see you guys in a little bit. We are actually supposed to be on hiatus right now, but we had to come on here and update you all on this attack and respond to it. You guys know it's 2025, the first day of 2025. And our mantra, Poppin' Politics, Metro Conservative Media's mantra is to attack the bureaucracy. And this is what we have to be on the attack. We should not come from a state of fear. We have to be on the attack. And we reminded first day of 2025 to be on the attack. And this is exactly what we're going to do. Before I let you guys go, it looks like there's been another killing on the subway. Someone pushed a man on the NYC subway tracks. So, oh my gosh.
Hey, and real quick, before you go, I almost forgot. I'm also on the Daily Mojo, so look up the Daily Mojo. You can find us right there, Real Daily Mojo on X. I do morning updates 4 days a week. I go on with them for 15 minutes on Fridays, Freedom Friday. But check me out there, and also the All American Talk Show. But most importantly, and this is what I want you to do, everybody out there, Poppin' Politics is an amazing resource, but we've got a problem. So many people on our side will not like and share and subscribe. Subscribing is free. Liking is free. Sharing is free. It's all free. Keep KJ and the rest of their crew on the air, because when you do that, that means our influence grows. It's people like them that helped us get President Trump elected and break up what had been an extraordinarily strong far left wing media that controlled things for so many years. So let's do that. Support Poppin' Politics. Support us over at the All American Talk Show, on the Daily Mojo, and so on. Please do that. That means so much to our freedom and this great nation.
Absolutely, Phil. I couldn't have said it much better. So on that note, folks, thank you guys so much for watching. Count your blessings and live a life of courage. Good night.
Good night.